It all started in London, but trust me, this story hits deep and dark from the jump. Dennis Nilsen, a guy who looked normal, even friendly at first glance, was hiding some seriously twisted stuff behind closed doors. You'd see him on the street, maybe say, "Hey," to him, maybe even laugh with him. And never in a million years imagine the horrors he kept locked up inside. People called him polite, quiet, unassuming, a guy who loved order, a guy who kept to himself, but behind that calm face was a man who would become one of Britain's most notorious serial killers. This isn't just a story about murder, it's about manipulation, deceit, and the chilling idea that evil doesn't always wear a scary mask. Sometimes, it smiles politely, invites you in, and the next thing you know, your life or someone else's life is hanging in the balance. Dennis grew up in Fraserburgh, Scotland, a small town where everyone knew each other. On the outside, he seemed like a regular kid. He was quiet, introverted, and had a complicated relationship with his family. Early on, he struggled with being different. He was gay at a time when society was harsh about it, and he felt isolated, like an outsider. That loneliness planted seeds of obsession and need for control that would later twist into something dangerous. After school, he moved to London and got a job in the civil service. He was meticulous, organized, liked routine. That image of normalcy, it was a perfect cover. Nobody suspected that behind the polite greetings and neat appearance was a mind planning unspeakable things. His first victims weren't random. Dennis didn't just attack strangers on impulse. He sought out men who were alone, vulnerable, people who could be lured without drawing attention. Often, they were young men living rough, drifting in and out of London's nightlife, or even men he met at gay pubs and clubs. He was charming, friendly, someone they could trust, and that trust was the weapon he wielded. Once he got them in his flat, the real darkness emerged. He would drug, strangle, and ultimately kill them. But it wasn't just the act itself. What followed was even more disturbing. Dennis had an obsession with control and immortality. He wouldn't just leave his victims behind. He would store them in his home, dismember them, keep parts of them in strange and gruesome ways. He created a twisted world inside that apartment, a world where he could exert total control over life and death. He often worked late nights, sometimes during the day, blending in with normal life whilst secretly committing atrocities in his flat. Neighbors didn't notice much at first, maybe the occasional odd smell, some noise, but nothing that seemed criminal. He was careful, calculated, methodical. That's what made him so dangerous. And yet, it wasn't all mechanical. There was a chilling ritual to his crimes. He would talk to the bodies afterward, and sometimes clean them meticulously, sometimes bathe with them. He confessed later that it gave him a sense of companionship he craved in life. That need for connection, twisted and unfulfilled, became the driving force behind every crime. What made him almost untouchable for years was how normal he appeared in public. He volunteered in his neighborhood, interacted politely with colleagues, and avoided obvious suspicion. Meanwhile, the pile of evidence in his flat was growing. And the sad truth: he was helped by his own belief in careful planning and his ability to manipulate the world around him. Each victim he chose was someone society had overlooked, someone whose absence might not be noticed quickly. And that gave him time to continue, time to build his macabre little empire. But people aren't perfect, and even the most meticulous criminals make mistakes. It started small: a neighbor smelling something foul, complaints about blocked drains, curious people asking questions, but Dennis had a way of keeping the world at bay, of soothing suspicions with charm and politeness. Still, the cracks began to show. One day, he accidentally left a body too exposed, too close to detection, and as the stench and evidence built, the net started closing in. Police were called. Investigators approached, piecing together the trail of his victims, the strange behavior, the missing men. And when they finally entered his flat, what they found was almost beyond belief. Bodies stacked, stored, evidence of rituals, signs of obsession, and a lifetime of manipulation revealed. The reality of what Dennis Nilsen had done was horrifying. He had kept his victims close even in death, a grotesque version of the companionship he never found in life. He was arrested, and the case became headline news across the UK. 8. People couldn't comprehend how a seemingly normal man could lead such a double life. Courtroom proceedings exposed every detail, every manipulation, every lie he told to keep suspicion at bay. 8. His calm demeanor during trial only made it more chilling. Here was a man who could discuss his murders without obvious remorse, who had calculated every step to maintain his secret life. As the trial progressed, more details emerged. Dennis confessed to multiple murders, revealing the patterns, the methods, and the twisted reasoning behind each act. 8. It was a glimpse into the mind of a killer who was both calculating and lonely, charming and horrifying. The public watched in disbelief. Psychologists and criminologists dissected his behavior, trying to understand how a man like him could exist in society for so long without detection. And the verdict: he was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment, a life behind bars that would ensure he could never harm another victim. But the story doesn't end with the trial. 8. Dennis Nilsen's crimes left a permanent mark on the people of London and the families of his victims. The fear, the horror, the betrayal, they lingered. And for the world. 8. It was a stark reminder that evil doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, smiles politely, and waits until it's too late. His life became a case study in obsession, isolation. 8. And the terrifying capabilities of human beings when loneliness and control mix in the wrong way. After the arrest, Dennis Nilsen didn't panic. He stayed calm, polite even, like nothing had changed. But inside, the walls he built around his secrets were crumbling fast. Police started going through his flat piece by piece, uncovering the scale of the horror. 8. Bodies stacked, preserved traces of rituals, dismembered remains hidden in cupboards and tanks. Everything pointed to years of carefully concealed murders. Every victim told a story of loneliness, trust misplaced, and a predator who had mastered the art of manipulation. The more investigators uncovered, the more chilling it got. They weren't just seeing killings. 8. They were seeing a man obsessed with companionship, a man who turned love, connection, and loneliness into a deadly trap. Dennis was interrogated, and over time, he began to confess. Not immediately, but slowly, almost like he was telling a story of his own life rather than admitting to crimes. Each confession revealed the same disturbing pattern. He would meet vulnerable men, invite them to his flat, gain their trust, and then strangle them. Afterward, he would bathe with the bodies, sometimes keep them for days, sometimes weeks. 8. In a grotesque attempt to create a twisted version of friendship, he spoke calmly, matter of factly, detailing events in precise order. 8. Investigators noted that he wasn't remorseful in the traditional sense. He understood what he did was wrong, but he framed it in terms of his own needs: the need for control, the need to prevent loneliness, the need to maintain his little world. As the confessions piled up, police had to confront the reality. Dennis Nilsen wasn't just a one-off killer. He was a serial killer, calculated and consistent, and had slipped under the radar for years. Newspapers ran headlines screaming horror, neighbors and colleagues were shocked, and society was forced to question, how can someone so seemingly normal commit so many brutal acts? Psychologists weighed in, dissecting his mind. They described him as organized, compulsive, and socially isolated, a man whose emotional deficits combined with his obsession for companionship to create a deadly mix. In simple terms, he craved connection so much that when he couldn't have it in life, he manufactured it in death. By the end, Dennis Nilsen's legacy wasn't just his crimes, it was a chilling lesson in psychology, manipulation, and the darkness lurking behind polite faces. He died in prison, leaving behind a story of horror, obsession, and tragedy. But his case continues to educate, fascinate, and warn the world. Monsters don't always roar. Sometimes they whisper, smile, and wait. And the lessons: stay aware, Trust cautiously. 8. And understand that evil sometimes wears the mask of normalcy. For content creators and storytellers, his story is a goldmine of suspense, hooks, and psychological intrigue. 8. Every detail from the meticulous planning to the chilling post-mortem rituals can be crafted into gripping voiceover content. The first 30 seconds of any video on Nilsen should slam the audience with disbelief. A polite man, a friend, a neighbor, a monster hiding in plain sight. After that, the narrative flows naturally into how loneliness, manipulation, and obsession collided to produce years of horror. That's what keeps viewers hooked. That's what makes the story click. 8. And that's why the Dennis Nilsen case remains one of the most compelling true crime stories ever documented.